Hey, good afternoon. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Sue Wang, who's a partner at Sidley. Sue, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Sue, one of the things I noticed about your bio is that you went to college with a degree in biology. Tell me what you were thinking in terms of career choice and why you chose that as your major.
I did not actually think I would go on and become a doctor. That's not what I was interested in when I pursued biology.
Huh?
I was more thinking the mad scientist route,
Oh, interesting.
which is I was a big fan of science fiction growing up, and what I really liked was the idea of biological engineering, taking what we know about science fundamentally and then using it to come up with something new and useful.
Huh.
And so that's what interested me about biology and why I pursued that degree in undergraduate.
What kind of career visions did you have? Like, what did you envision coming up with? And what do you mean exactly?
I thought I would be helping to do, gene engineering, coming up with new drugs is one, or genetic engineering, genetically modified animals was big at the time. It was the beginning of cloning as well,
Oh, yeah,
to show
right.
you how old I am. And so the idea of just using science and coming up with something that's useful, that would improve our lives, that's what I was interested in.
Do you come from a family of scientists or biologists, healthcare, anything like that?
No, not at all. My mom is a librarian.
Oh,
She does digital, or she used to before she retired, digital librarian. My dad's an artist, so that may also have been what inspired it, was just the creativity aspect of it,
huh, huh,
making
huh.
something.
Now you said you didn't study biology because to become a doctor, but were you open to that idea? Were you kind of maybe doing a little bit of pre-med just to hedge your bets?
Not exactly. It's a little weird to say given my current profession, but I didn't think I wanted to be a doctor because I didn't want to deal with people. I just wasn't sure I had the right bedside manner for that.
Oh, interesting. That's
And yeah, so I had always sort of envisioned myself, committing to research.
yeah, yeah. Were you thinking about a PhD or you hadn't thought about that at that point?
It hadn't progressed to that point, but I think that would have been the natural endpoint
Yeah, yeah,
for me if I had continued with
yeah, yeah.
biology.
So now I'm very curious to know what steered you to law school of all things. At what point did that happen and what triggered it?
Yeah, so I think a few things. One was there was the biology track for me, but I was also doing political science.
Hmm.
And I had the fortune in my undergraduate program of being exposed to all of sort of the classics of, philosophy and liberal and political thought. And I was just fascinated with that.
Hmm.
The other aspect of it was that ultimately, despite thinking I didn't have the proper bedside manner to be a doctor, I actually did still want to be around people.
Hmm.
And I was doing at the time it's Model United Nations.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of
Hmm.
the program, but so there was in my extracurriculars, I was doing debate and negotiation, and I really enjoyed that aspect.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I was concerned that continuing down into, science and into a PhD program, I would have limited ability to engage in the other activities that I enjoyed.
Yeah, interesting. Well, did law just come to you naturally? Did someone suggest it to you? How did you even think about that as a career?
I thought of it as so in college, I had no idea what lawyers do.
Hmm.
Um, Law was not in my vision until pretty late towards the end of college.
Hmm.
And so I actually wound up not going directly to law school,
Hmm.
as many people do. I spent a couple of years working in a law firm to see, as a
Okay.
legal assistant, to see if I
Yeah.
would actually like that.
Uh-huh.
It's it wasn't the natural progression. I think some of it was just what can I do with what I like to do, which is debate and negotiate.
Yeah.
And I sort of settled on law as well. It seems better than anything else.
Well, Well, how did you like law school? Did you love it? I mean, did it fit? Did it scratch both itches for you?
It did. I ultimately, what I also found I really loved about law school was reading cases
Hmm.
and reading about the law. And I think part of that might also actually somewhat go back to my undergraduate training, because on top of the really deep science, I was also taking classes in evolution and in animal behavior. And that is sort of more about the broader um, high level aspects of our world and of pattern recognition, and some of that spoke to me through the law as well, in the way that it is changing. The cases are sort of developing our common law, it was fascinating to me, the way that the laws have evolved, and so that part was a surprise that I actually really enjoyed reading the law.
Now, you obviously became a litigator. Did you kind of have that goal in mind when you started, or did you ever think about being a transactional lawyer at some point?
I have to confess, I didn't know what transactional lawyers
Uh-huh.
do. Apologies. Um, and maybe you can explain it to me, Richard. These days, I'm still not entirely sure what transactional lawyers do. Um, Again, I think I mentioned I didn't really know what lawyers do
Uh-huh.
when I was in college. And litigation is obviously the focus of what you learn in law school.
Yeah.
And so it's what I knew coming into the law firm. I thought I would try out transactional work, since my firm allows that, but ultimately, litigation just fit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
clicked, and I never looked back.
Well, now looking at your practice, it seems like you get to use your science background all the time. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
It's been great. I get to work with some of the top scientists in their field, who we hire as experts in my
Yeah.
cases. And it gives me more access to them than I think I ever had as a college student, in a much more natural setting. Like they're
Uh-huh.
not lecturing. We're talking,
Uh-huh.
and we're coming up with developing a story together.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is that having the scientific background allows me to connect with
Yeah.
those experts. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I work with pharma companies, so I'm talking to employee scientists at those companies as well. And we can share a common vocabulary, and
Mhm.
it allows them to open up to me,
Mhm.
and to know that sort of I understand what they're saying. And then the lawyer part kicks in, and we talk about, how do we actually up level this and explain it to a judge or to a jury.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I've always viewed my role as sort of translator, educator,
Mhm. Mhm.
going from the deep scientist to the lay friendly explanation.
Mhm.
And having that biology background has been useful, because, like as I said, I know the lingo. I can talk to them at their level, and they can be assured that I'm not missing something
Right.
that they're telling me.
Totally. Do you think they can tell, or can they tell when you talk to them that have this background, or the base vocabulary? Is that apparent to them?
I think as long as you speak with confidence, and just sort of dive in, it's not like my background is always completely exactly
Yeah.
on topic with what we're talking about. For
Yeah.
example, I will confess I was not a great chemistry student. I like biology more. But I know enough that I know what terms to use and what questions to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
And frequently, that is the most important part, is knowing what question to ask,
Totally.
because sometimes the answer that you get doesn't always expose the particular thing that will turn the tide in the case.
Yeah. So all the cases you work on, are they pretty much exclusively life sciences, or do you still dabble in other areas of technology as well?
I do. I won't say dabble because our OGC doesn't like that word. But I do work in other technology areas.
Uh-huh.
So I've tried cell phone cases.
Okay.
I've had software cases. really the sort of panoply of technology issues,
Yeah.
especially since I sit in San Francisco, that you would expect to get
Yeah.
from Silicon Valley.
Do you like those equally as much, or is your heart really on the life science stuff?
Um, I prefer the life sciences work. And it's because I think with life sciences, I really add that value.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially as I said, when we're talking to experts and talking to witnesses. Um, on the software side, I can do it. I often what the value I add there is what I get my sort of software focused colleagues to do on my life sciences cases, which is to serve as the reasonably intelligent idiot. Um, explain your case to me,
Uh-huh,
make
uh-huh.
sure I understand it. And the other piece, of course, in all of our cases is damages. So I look at frequently, I'm more often looking at in software cases, the economics of the case
Mhm.
and leaving my more sort of computer engineering focused colleagues to look at the technology. But I like doing both
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I don't think it makes sense to silo yourselves into one technology area. And I also think, it's useful to sort of look at the common themes,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because it's still the same law that we're
yeah,
applying.
yeah, yeah. So how do you reflect on, you said earlier, you didn't think you want to be a doctor because you didn't think you wanted to work with people, and obviously now you're in a business that you work with people all the time. Do you think that you just kind of miscalled that, or do you think that you really like working with people more than you originally thought, or you acquired a taste for people as you became an adult? What would you say?
Um, let's maybe say I acquired a taste for certain people. Maybe that's the best way to explain it. In some ways, I thought the concept of being a doctor, of seeing different patients day in and day out, um, to me, that was not what I was really interested in at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Looking back, knowing how far I've come and where I am now, possibly,
yeah.
maybe I did miscall that. I know what I didn't miscall though was, not wanting to go to med school and going through that many more years of education.
Well, it's never too late.
That is true. That is true. I recently told a colleague, because I love animals,
Uh-huh.
obviously biology,
Uh-huh.
that I originally wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh, interesting.
And there are still some days when I think, well, it's not too late. Maybe I'll go to vet school.
That's so cool. Well, Sue, I really appreciate you sharing your story with me. It was fascinating hearing about it, and I really appreciate your taking the time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
This is Richard Hsu and Sue Wang. Thanks.
Thank